Signore e signori, abbiamo più influenza, sui tuoi figli di te, Molly amiamo creato e iniziato da New Jersey. Last week today lived, presentato da Fantastic, Comics and Art.
Let's fucking go.
Hello, everybody out there. How's it going? All our friends out there in YouTube land, Facebookville, LinkedInburg, wherever you may be watching. Thank you to this very special edition of Last Week Tonight Live. In case you don't realize it, we're usually on during the day, usually 11 a.m. Eastern. But I made a special accommodation for a very special guest that I'm really excited to bring on tonight. And again, I know that, hey, everybody gets set in their schedule. Everybody's like, hey, 9 o'clock or 7 or 8, depending where you are, you have to put on Fanboy. 10 o'clock, you got to turn on Cliff. 11 o'clock is Phil's time. I understand. I took you out of your comfort zone today. Hopefully you're watching this live because I'm going to give you a shot at a giveaway. And I should say this too, if you're watching me on anything but YouTube and you want a chance at these giveaways, you should go ahead and jump in on your YouTube. Open it up right now while you can, because it's going to be a little bit of an interactive session in that respect. And like I said, I've got a great guest, great guy. I'm very excited. We've had him on the show before. This is, I think, the first creator that I'm welcoming back. But before we get into that, let's just say hi to a couple people that we have in here today. Neil collects. How you doing, Neil? Actually, I got an email from Neil's channel. It looks like you open up memberships. Neil, tell me if I'm right on that. So you should be checking out Neil's channel if you're not already. And Neil's great because he does a variety of different things. He's on Fanboy almost every Saturday at this point. I've seen him go lives at different times of day, and he's doing anything from comics to I think that I see you make ice cream or something yesterday. I might be thinking of Robin. But yeah, go ahead and check out Neil Collects. Psychedelic Paul. I haven't seen him in a while. I was just thinking today, I haven't seen Paul. I hope he's doing well. Great guy. Thank you for joining. Manny, the Hobgoblin Collector. Let me tell you something. Still, not only the I would say Hobgoblin expert, but Manny, if you're not following Manny on IG, does some great artwork. And I get to watch him IG, and then when I'm watching Between the Lines on Monday nights, Manny jumps in consistently and always has a great piece. Durs, not a new time. This is just a temporary thing. But you know what? If I like it, maybe we'll make it a regular thing because I don't go out on Saturdays anyway. Though every other Saturday, and it will be next Saturday, I am going to be on Evil Mike's channel, which I think is our last installment of the Stephen King Dark Tower discussion. So make sure that you check that out. Okay, Neil saying hi to Manny. And Durs, I'm excited that Durs gets to watch because Durs is usually working here. So now you get to see us live. And look, if you don't know Durs, you're just, what are you doing? What are you doing with yourself? One of the most positive people, forget about on YouTube, I think one of the most positive people I've come across. And very knowledgeable. And he's been killing it lately, too, with the whatnots. Durs, I realized I had something I was going to mail out to you, and I forgot about it. And I just found it. I was like, oh, I never mailed that out. But that's the story of my life. So we said hi to everybody. Why don't I go ahead and I'm going to bring our guest on here. My guest needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. This is somebody who I'd have to say is bar none one of the hardest working creators that I've come across. Now, typically, when you have a YouTube channel, and most people here do, you might hear from somebody with a Kickstarter, and they'll send you a preview, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, and usually you'll talk to them or you'll talk about the book, and then you never hear from them again. Not this guy. Patrick is somebody who a couple years ago at this point, which blows my mind. I jumped at the opportunity. He emailed me and I read his book Condry, actually a couple issues of his book, and I went from, okay, what's this going to be, to, wow, this is something really special. And after talking to Pat, it's no surprise that it is something special, because this is a special guy. So with that, let me go ahead and bring to the stage, now coming to the stage, Patrick Hickey Jr., head guy from Legacy Comix. How are you, Pat?
I'm doing great. I don't even have to be on the show at this point. You've done like a great job of like selling me. So it was fun. I'll see you later. No, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It's always good to talk to you. Easily one of my favorite creators on YouTube and Instagram. Again, genuine, kind, super happy to be here.
Thank you. Now, Pat, I've just talked about a little bit about Legacy Comix, but for those who don't know, tell us about Legacy.
So Legacy was founded in August of 2021. I was at Lesser Known Comics at the time, where I had done Conjury 0 through 3. And I just had that long look in the mirror where I was kind of like, is everything going exactly the way that I want it to go? And the answer was no. And I just felt like I could do things differently. So I kind of put my money where my mouth was, left Lesser Known Comics, started Legacy, did a Kickstarter. We got funded in like 4 hours. We were essentially 300% funded. I basically pulled in like every favor. I've been a journalist for over 20 years. I'm a former NBC editor. I've written 7 books on video game history. I'm a voice actor in the video game industry. I pulled in every favor possible to get funded to get us like the capital that we needed to get started. And then we were kind of like off to the races. About 6 months into that journey, I was co-owner and editor-in-chief, and I eventually bought out the rest of the company from my other co-owner, and I took the reins. What's up, Steve? Took the reins myself, and it's probably the best decision I've ever made. And we've just kind of been off the races. We've done license work for Bram Stoker, the Stokerverse. We did a comic for an off-Broadway production. We just finished a comic earlier this year on a feature film that's being filmed right now in Canada. We're releasing omnis of our stuff now, which is like the dream for any independent creator. You know, just to get to that point, like we have enough stuff now that like you could buy the book and not the single issues, because so many people are like, oh, I'll wait for it to become an omnibus. And the chances of an indie comic becoming an omnibus are, you know, extremely slim. So the fact that like we were able to get there with 2 of our series this year, super important. So yeah, that's kind of like the backbone. Like I'm the editor-in-chief. I letter all of our books. I write about 2/3 of our books. Yeah, man, I run the entire company out of my garage. I pack every order. Like I run the socials. Like this is my third child.
I just want to say, Effin, I appreciate that. I don't know about all that, but I appreciate that nonetheless. And we've had a couple people come in and say hello here too. But one thing that you were saying too, you know, you looked in the mirror and you were saying, you know, can I be doing something differently? And that's something that I really, every Legacy title that I've read, that's what resonates with me, is that it's different. It is easy to go to your LCS right now and pick up, you know, the latest X-Men book or the latest Batman book, and you know what you're getting into. You know, these big companies are very scared, you know, to take chances. Usually because when they do, people, us comic book fans, are like, hey, this is too different than what I'm used to. We can't do this. But you pick up a Legacy book, and I'll be honest with you, when I picked up the first issue of Conjury that Pat sent to me, I looked at it and it's like, oh, okay, somebody's doing Sin City. Read it, because it's definitely not. And that's something that resonates, I think, with me with Legacy, is that you have a good way of surprising us and throwing us a curveball in a really good way. Roscoe just came here. Roscoe, by the way, I don't know if you know Pat, but you should. I'm mentioning him because you should check out Roscoe's IG page and YouTube. Just check out everybody's YouTube here. But Roscoe is right up your alley. Video game fan, cartoon fan, and a wonderful artist.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's up, Roscoe? Nice to meet you.
And let's talk a little bit, too, about some of your other endeavors. You've written quite a few books. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I actually I just finished my 8th book, but my first 7 books are on video game history. I've interviewed hundreds of video game developers from the Atari 2600 to the PlayStation 5. They're called the minds behind the games. They're available in over 2,000 libraries worldwide. They're in like Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Full Sail. Um, any place that has like a video game history program, they use my books in their classrooms. They use like my books are used all over the place. Because I'm a journalist at heart. That's how I started. Like I said, when I did my first Kickstarter, I was banking on like 17 at that time, 16, 17 years of sources. I've interviewed so many people, and it was just like, bro, I have a Kickstarter. I have a Kickstarter. I have a Kickstarter. And it started with the journalism, and then it branched out to voice acting in video games. And I did close to 90 voices in WrestleQuest, which came out last August. I voiced the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Oh yeah, and like 88 other characters in that game. I voiced Nicolas Cage in the Renfield video game, so I voiced Nicolas Cage's version of Dracula in there. I've done trailers for like 25 other video games, but like journalism, writing books, that's how it all started. And then the thing was though, and like I think I've said this to you before, Phil, I wrote Condry before I started college. So I wrote Condry when I was like 18 years old, and I could just never find the right artist. And I would show the script to people over the years, and they were like, this is really cool, this is really different. I had like the first 10 issues written out, and they're like, oh, you just need an artist. It's so back then it was so hard to find an artist. Now I mean it's a little bit easier, but it's still hard to find the right artist. Is incredibly hard, it's never to a Slim Jim, Roscoe. Yeah. But so yeah, I mean video game history, and this is the thing, I think that stuff helps me because my video game books are about allowing video game developers to tell the stories behind their games. So it's like perfect example. I interview the guy that made Aladdin on the Sega Genesis, and he talks about like being 6'8" and having to sleep in his car during most of like the development cycle, and it just makes you love that game even more because it's so pretty and it's just so much fun. It makes you really care about that game. The dialogue in that interview it's special. So the thing is, great comics, and this is something Peter Hogan from Resident Alien told me in an interview when I interviewed him, and he's been a huge help to me over the years too. Dynamic dialogue, and it's no stranger to Peter Hogan has a background in journalism too. Journalism is like incredibly selfless. It's about letting other people tell their stories, and I think when you're reading a great comic, these characters begin to take a life of their own. And they all have their own voices, and all of their dialogue is dynamic. So it's just like it's something I try and take my journalism backbone and apply that to when I write dialogue in comics.
That's amazing.
So without the books, I'm not here. So
Now,
it's crazy.
Speaking of wrestling, because I know that there are at least 2 big wrestling fans here, Roscoe and Fanboy. Fanboy especially, him and his wife. Big wrestling fans. Neil, I think a little bit too. I don't know. But one of your books, this is one that I find particularly intriguing. Because to be honest with you, it reminds me of almost like a side quest you would see in like Grand Theft Auto. But one of your books kind of marries a little bit of everything you've done, I guess, in that respect. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the name of the book is called The Job. And it's about a pro wrestler. Dan Dero, who is a jobber. He loses every match, but he looks like $1 million. He's got like really cool hair. He's got great, great gear, and he's got a hot valet. And everyone's like, you lose every match. Like, why do you keep doing this? Like, how can you afford to like travel to this place, travel to that place? And he's just like, I rob banks. And his wife is his getaway driver, and she's also his valet. And it's basically like, so growing up, I'm a 90s kid, 80s, 90s kid. I'm 41 now, but like I grew up on great films. So like we're talking like Point Break. So The Job is like Point Break married like Mickey Rourke's The Wrestler. It's it's got like a little like Two Broke Girls and like Mike and Molly in there. It's like a situational like relationship comedy meets like legit bank robbery, and tons of pro wrestling references. So like I haven't missed a Monday Night Raw in probably like the entire, like, I love pro wrestling. I've done ring announcing for pro wrestling. I've interviewed tons of pro wrestlers: Dolph Ziggler, Paul Heyman, Rey Mysterio, Diamond Dallas Page. Like, I love pro wrestling. My master's thesis was on pro wrestling. I trained for 2 weeks to become a professional wrestler. I got a staph infection on my face during that time. I almost died. That's a story for another day. But it's just like the job is like a marriage of great action movies during the 90s and the best pro wrestling stories and stuff. It's like Behind the Mat, Dog Day Afternoon, Point Break, all mixed into one. It's so much fun.
It's definitely a very unique concept. And as soon as you said it to me, I was like, why hasn't anybody made this into a movie yet? Or a TV series? Because it feels like something you would watch.
Well, it's like I think I told you the last time you interviewed me. It started off as a play because I had a actor friend of mine before COVID go to me, how come you've never written a play before? And I'm like, give me a deadline. Like, let's go. And he's just like, it was like around Halloween. And he was like, oh, I could give you until like Thanksgiving. And I basically wrote the entire first arc of the job in like 4 days. And then what happened was COVID happened. And we had a producer. We were going to have a wrestling ring on stage. Like, it was going to be crazy. And he was just like, yeah, it's not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And the guy was like, I'm sorry. And I was like, no, it's okay. And I always hold on to everything that I write. So then we started Legacy, and Condry was going to be like the foundation book, you know? And then we got Afram Jambalai to do Legend of the Night Owl. And then I'm like, we needed like at least one more book. And I was just like, yo, let's go with the job. And it's been one of our top selling series so far. It's so much fun to write. It's just a lot of fun period. We've released one Ash Can so far this year. We're going to release another Ash Can later this year to try and fill in some of the gaps in the story. But it's just like, it's so much fun. If you love pro wrestling and you love 90s action films with like, you know, Bruce Willis, Keanu Reeves, Gary Busey, Patrick Swayze, like you'll love all of that stuff.
I'm going to give everybody a heads up. We're going to start a giveaway in about 15 minutes where I am going to pick somebody who's going to get, we'll call it a legacy prize pack. We're going to put something nice together. Open up another browser window because you're going to need it. Again, we're going to start that in about 15 minutes. And hey, look, if you are on Facebook or LinkedIn or something else that I just don't know about watching us, make your way over to YouTube because really that's where the party is. I appreciate you watching that. I especially hope that people in LinkedIn are watching because if anything that you pull from this, even if you're not into comics, if you're not into video game books, if you're not into wrestling, Pat's story, I think you're going to find this is the most probably the hardest working independent creator I've ever met. And really, I think it's a little bit of a story about persistence. It's a story about business. And honestly, independent publishing, like the way Pat's doing, is probably one of the last things you could really kind of punk rock your way into this life. You can't even do that with punk rock now. You know, maybe this an independent video to a lesser extent, but I don't want to get too far off the tracks. I do want to ask you, I'm not going to ask you for the full story, but the staph infection, you were training, did it have anything to do with Rikishi?
No.
Okay. I could see that. That would make sense.
Dirty mats. That's all I'm going to say. You know, I was warned. I was warned, dude, wash your face like before and after. And I did. But very similar to Dan Diro's like big flip haircut. I had something maybe not nearly as tall, but I had that little, and I would have to put the hair gel spike in it. And as soon as I left Gleason's gym that day, it was raining. So it was like the gel was just pouring all over my face. And then I came home and it was like a little pimple right here. And then like 3 days later, it was like that. And then within a week, it was half my face. And my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was like, there is no kissy, there is no huggy, there is no nothing until you go to the doctor and get that checked out. So I went to like urgent care. And they put me on anthrax medication for like 4 days. I did not miss a day of work. I didn't miss a day of anything. And I had like my face bandaged and stuff. It was ridiculous. But it went away. And Yeah, that was it was an interesting time in my life.
You were like the Toxic Avenger for a little bit.
Toxic Avenger meets like Harvey Dent, like absolutely.
Now, one thing that we didn't really talk about yet, one of the things that really impresses me about you, being Facebook friends and Instagram and, seeing what you post, you do little kind of slice of life things like we all do. And I didn't mention this even when we were on stage talking. I was impressed that you took a very small kind of minor true life event and you've made it into somewhat of a series. At least I've seen a couple books about it. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, what book are you talking about? I'm
talking about the turkeys.
Oh my God. Okay. So yeah. So the thing is, it's only one book right now. It's an ash can, but we have like three. We have 4 different covers because it just like it got on fire. So this is what happened. So now I'm in my man cave, my garage, but we just moved here probably like a little bit over a year ago. My family, we used to live in Brooklyn and we were in this tiny little apartment. And it was like even harder to run this company because I had like this like makeshift like hidden room where I would have like all of our comics and I would do all of our bagging, boarding, packing, everything in this one room, and it was terrible. Now I have some space and it's great. So the thing is, we're driving to the new house for like the first time, and we're driving, and all of a sudden there's like 40 like turkeys like on the corner just like chilling. And I'm just like, what's the deal with the turkeys? And my wife is like, oh, they like kind of like live in the area, like you didn't read about it or anything like that. And I'm like, no. So maybe like a week later, the front of my dining room is like this, like it's like 4 big windows. So like when we wake up, we roll up the blinds and stuff like that, and you can see right in front of the house. So I roll up the blinds, and there's like 20 turkeys like right in front of my house. And I'm
let
like,
me tell you something.
This?
Let me tell everybody here too, in case you're in an area that does not have wild turkeys. Like Fanboy, I know you're in Texas. I don't know if you guys have turkeys in Texas. Here in Jersey, we also have wild turkeys. Canada, you probably have them too. I don't even know. You don't want to mess with wild turkeys. They will mess you up.
Yeah, they're big.
Oh yeah,
they're big.
They're scary. It's like, okay, these are where the dinosaurs went.
And they're ugly. They're ugly, and they're scary. And like I have 2 small kids. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they get kind of scared. And the thing is, like, I'm 6'4", and it's just like if like a big one comes up, they're like crotch level. So it's just like, yeah, no. So I started reading up on all of these turkeys, and there's laws against like hunting them in Staten Island. You can't hurt them. They're protected. They've like stopped people from going to the hospital. They've caused traffic accidents. So I'm just like, why has no one ever written a comic about these turkeys? So I love Stan Sakai and love Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. So I'm just like, what if these turkeys were like a Japanese like Yakuza gang that like ran Staten Island? And Joshua Adams and I got to work on it. I wrote the script. We went to work, and then again, like I said, I worked. I have to work the room and work the angles as much as possible. I use my journalism background. I started reaching out to the local newspaper here in Staten Island, and then they wrote an article about me, and it got really good traffic, and we sold a lot of books. And then the New York Post.
Seen the article.
Yeah. And then the Post reached out to me, and then they came over my house, and then we ended up walking to like where the hospital is. That's where they all like live, like on the power lines, the turkeys. And they took like a picture of me with like my arms out and stuff. And we sold a ton of copies. And the thing is, it's like, I do not want to be remembered as the guy that wrote a comic about turkeys, but I do want to be remembered as the guy that will write about turkeys to keep his comic book company afloat and pertinent and in the public light. So it worked out great for us. It's a fun comic. I totally want to continue writing it in one way or another, but it's just like Condry, The Job, Brooklyn Bleeds. Those are kind of like where my heart is. But that was so much fun to write. And it's our best-selling comic. So it's been fun to meet and talk to a lot of people. The only sad thing is because it's local, because it's like slice of life, you're going to get a lot of one-time customers with it. It's not the way to like build a company, which is hard. We've gotten so much great feedback from that comic. And like I said, I love it. I think it's some of Joshua Adams' best stuff. It's one of our best ash cans that we've done, but it's just like, it's not going to like lead to the long-term success of Legacy Comix. you know?
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, I'll say this: part of I think what I see from Legacy, which I haven't seen from a lot of independent creators I've spoken with, is you really have a lot of variety. I'm looking at the website right now, and look, you've got crime, you've got horror, you've got things that even just kind of, border themselves. You got odds makers. I've never heard of that one. I want to check that out too. That looks like a kind of a crime thing to me. And you have, some, especially for an independent title, independent company, you have some great talent working with you too. Steve Conjay is one I could tell because there's a couple people here who've come over from Reggie Collects may remember Steve's work.
Yeah, I broke Steve into comics. I was the first person to publish Steve. Steve's one of my favorite artists to work with, and that's how I kind of like see Legacy right now. We're kind of like the Montreal Expos of independent comic book creation. Like, I want to get somebody, I want to get those undrafted free agents, and those people that like want to break into comics and want to like learn, and I'll teach them. And I'll let them know, like, if I want to work with them again, and like I want to see how they promote themselves online, because that's the thing too. So many people think that like indie comics is just about producing work. It's about producing work that sells. It's so hard. I mean, I've seen people like a lot of the times when we have people do books, like it's written into their contract that they'll get a certain amount of copies for themselves. Like, it's like my gift to them, and I'll message them and go, did you get the books I sent? And they're like, yeah, like 2 weeks ago. And I'm just like, for me, whenever I get a book in the mail, because I've worked for other comic book companies before, like I do anthology stuff for Bird's Eye View Comics. I worked at lesser known comics, like, and then like all my publishing for other places and stuff. Every time I get a book from a publisher that I've worked on, either if it's written a forward and afterward, anything, the day it comes in the mail, I'm on Facebook, boom, promoting, because the thing is, it's just like this whole build it and they will come stuff, it only works in a Kevin Costner movie. It doesn't work in independent comics. Like, you have to be relentless. You have to go out there and promote your stuff every single day. So it's just like, that's why we have so much different stuff. I mean, it's like I joke around with people that like my daughter has one of the best-selling comics on
It's about
Legacy.
to bring that up too. Yeah.
Because my wife and I actively promoted the living hell out of that book. And it goes to show, is My Brother and the Ladybug the best comic that Legacy has ever done? No, but it sold far more than comics that I think are a lot better than it. It's just like, you look at, baseball teams or hockey teams, whatever. Sometimes the teams that win the championships aren't necessarily the best teams. But they have an intangible in play. They have things that work for and against them. They have those little X factors and stuff like that. And I feel like every independent creator, again, needs to take that look in the mirror and say, what am I really good at? And how do I elevate myself as much as possible? And then how do I work with people that will make my weaknesses seem like they're not important? And how do I grow? And a lot of people don't do that. They just release books. And I've worked with artists before where they're like, oh, I did all the art, and, the book is only sold, like, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, 75 copies. And I'm like, okay, it sold 75 copies. I've promoted that book every day for the past 6 months. I go on your Facebook. I don't even know, or your Instagram, and I don't even know if you're a comic book artist. You don't even show anybody that you draw. You don't share links to your stuff, anything. So it's just like, it's hard. Independent creation, it's like a knife fight every single day.
And that's how I think I learned about Legacy the first time, because I remember Steve talking about Renfield on Reggie's channel. I was a big fan of Dracula, like the book itself, back in the day when I was a little kid. I shouldn't say when I was a little kid. Age appropriate, we'll say. And and that kind of perked up. And then I know that you mentioned it here too, but that's the only. Is it your title the only one that is licensed by the Stoker's family?
Yeah. What happened was, in the middle of our Kickstarter, I know Dr. Stoker. He's like Bram Stoker's great like nephew or something like that. And I know his agent because, again, the journalism connection. And he was like, oh, what do you think about you guys getting 250-year-old unpublished notes to do like a Renfield ash can? And I was like, all right, let's do it. And, I cut a very shrewd deal with them on our end. It was like low risk, high reward. What's up, Brian? And real talk, like I was a little disappointed in how little they promoted, but for me, Renfield was a tremendously important book because at that point, Steve Conjay had only done a variant cover for Kroom. And when we got the Renfield deal in place, I went to my former co-owner at the time, and I'm like, I want Conjay on this book. And I'll never forget the conversation. It was just like, oh, I don't know if he's ready. He's never done sequentials, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, the book's going to move. It's a good opportunity for him. Let's do it. And I'll never forget that I got the original script for Renfield, and I'm very transparent. I apologize, but it's just like, I wasn't underwhelmed. I was just kind of like, there's kind of like a reason why these are possibly unpublished notes, you know? Right. So I had a long talk with the writer, and I was like, listen, we're going to have to add some stuff here to like fill in for context and stuff. And we ended up adding the scene where this bird flies into Renfield's like cell, and Renfield like just rips it apart. And I remember adding that into the script, writing that into the script, showing it to the writer. He was like, yeah, that's fine. No big deal. And then I went to Steve. I'm like, I want you to make this bird as pretty as possible. And then I just want Renfield to just devour it. Like, I want to show the descent into madness. Like, and Steve absolutely positively crushed like those 4 or 5 panels. And after that, I was just like, yeah, we need to keep him. We need to do more stuff with him. So it's just like Renfield for me is a super important book for us. One, because it's pretty cool. It's cool. It's our first license deal. I love the cover. But it just proved that Steve was like capable of so much more when given an opportunity.
And I've seen him pop up other places now too. I know he did a variant cover for Isolation.
Mm-hmm. But I have that book right over there. Slab.
Oh yeah. It's a great book.
Yeah. And he's doing his own book now, you know. He's doing great.
What's he working on now? I don't even know that.
He's got a kid's book called Dracu. So and I helped him letter the first book, and I edited the first book for him. It's really cool. It's a kid's book. They just finished issue 2 now. I know they're going to the printer. It's available digitally. It's like Dracu, DRAQ.co. You can pick up copies of the book there. I'm super proud of him. He's gonna do some more stuff for us. He's on the docket for at least 2 more books with us right now. Just he's busy, and that's my thing too. Like I got some great advice from an LCS owner probably like 4 years ago when I first started Condry, and he was like, never marry an artist. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's just like, he goes, I don't mean like use and abuse artists. He goes, if an artist is not ready to do like what you need them to do, you can find another one. If someone is in it with you, then you ride with them. And he goes, but the whole thing is just like, when you think of Spider-Man, how many artists can draw a wonderful Spider-Man? Tons of them, you know? So the thing is, it's just like, if you're an independent creator and you just write, you have to make sure that regardless of who's drawing your comic, the story is like really what keeps them, you know, in there. And the thing is too, I feel like a lot of indie comic book writers don't make themselves indispensable. They just write and throw their script at somebody, and they're like, all right, you letter it, you write it, you do this, you do that. So that's why I letter books. That's why I taught myself how to letter books. That's why I market our books. That's why I do. So the thing is, it's just like, if you're an artist, you have to make sure that you're in it to win it. And then if you're a writer, you have to make sure that you're not, you know, dispensable, because I get scripts, like we're a small comic book company, and I get scripts at least 3 or 4 a week, you know? And it's just like, what are you doing to make yourself different? You know, how are you trying to stand out? So it's rough.
Let me pause for a second. If in case you just joined us, we're here with Patrick Hickey Jr. from Legacy Comix. That's comics with an X. We're just talking legacy. We're talking about a lot of Patrick's work. We're going to get into in a little bit of some of the things that are on the horizon for Legacy. But before we do that, as I promised, we are going to do a giveaway. So if you open up another browser window before, like I said it, good, you're ahead of the game. If not, I'm going to take a minute or so, give you a couple seconds to open up a separate browser window, because you're going to do a little bit of work with this. We're going to experiment. This may be great, or it may be crap. We're going to find out. We're going to do it together on this journey. Once you have that browser window open, I want you to go to Legacy Comix. Again, that's with an X.com. That's LEGACYCOMIX.com. So give people a little bit of time to get there. And by the way, you should just bookmark this page because it is a great site.
Thank
Pat
you.
does a great job updating it and keeping it current. And
Every day, it's updated every day.
Yeah,
it's hard.
and like I said, he's got a lot of projects going on. This is, other than following Pat on social media, which you should be doing if you're not already. This will also have all the latest news for you. And assuming I don't take out my own microphone here.
That's okay.
Okay, so once you're on the Legacy Comix website, go to shop.
Now I'm gonna do this because now I'm curious.
Cassie's a fan here. Already,
Cassie's
got to type
awesome.
Okay, now once you're in the shop, scroll to the bottom, and you're going to go to page number 12.
Okay.
So again, you're on the Legacy Comix website in the shop, page 12. You're going to go to the 11th book on this page. You're going to have to do a little bit of scrolling. I told you I'm going to make you work for this tonight.
I'm working.
There you go. Okay, now once you have that up on the screen, again, page 12, book 11. You could use your fingers. That's fine.
Oh.
You're going to identify the 8th word in that title. Now, once you have that, hold on, I've got to refresh.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I've got to refresh. Once you have that, you're going to type hashtag and what that word is to get an entry. So again, legacycomics.com, shop, page 12, book 11, the 8th word. Hashtag
Oh my god.
that word, and you'll be in the running for a Legacy prize pack. Or you could wait until somebody types it in correctly, I suppose, into this
That's
chat, and then you'll know what it is. So you're just going to type hashtag that word, and you will be in the running. Okay,
Wow.
so while we're waiting for some people to do that, and I'll probably just give it away if we have to at some point. Just give away what the word is, I should say.
I already got it. I know what it is.
Yeah. Can you post the link, please? I can't because I'm on a cell phone. No. Unless I counted wrong. Hold on. I thought I checked twice. Let's see. Page.
I see somebody got it.
Yep, somebody's got it.
Yep.
Okay, again, you're going to Legacy Comix, that's with an X.com, LEGACYCOMIX.com. Go to shop. Page
I'll throw
12.
the shop link in. I'll make them go to page 12.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you
Page
go.
12, book number 11, the 8th word. And somebody put it in yet. Yep. See, we've got some people coming in.
Yeah, we got
also look at the chat at this point. And again, you'll
Nice.
be winning a Legacy prize pack. We will do the physical drawing towards the end, and I will give you guys a heads up when we need to.
Oh, we're getting them now. Look at this.
They're coming in. Okay. So let's see. We talked a little bit about the job. We talked about the turkeys. Let's talk a little bit about Brooklyn Bleeds, because that's definitely something that's a bit of a zeitgeist right now.
Oh yeah. So the thing is, it's just like I feel like with like the end of The Walking Dead, something for me was like missing in comics. You know, like that series was just so important to me. And I know, like, you know, they got the whole, you know, they're doing everything in color now and the deluxe stuff, but it was just like I remember picking up those issues as they came out, and it was just so freaking special. What's up, dope? So what the way Brooklyn Bleeds came to be was like I really wanted to write a zombie book. And then I wanted to do something in black and white. One, because I felt like it would be easier to get an artist because they wouldn't have to do colors. But then, it would be like kind of like our way of like acknowledging that like The Walking Dead did so much for comics. So what ended up happening was, and this is totally a true story. I'm probably gonna get in trouble for it, but I don't care. The first volume of Kroom that we did for Legacy Comix, I was not a fan of the way that art came out. It was redrawn twice, and I was just not happy with it. I had like 2 or 3 people that I know in comics that have been in comics for like 30 years. They're like, you can't release this. And I was just like, it's a part of our Kickstarter. I'm gonna print out a very small amount just to cover like the Kickstarter orders and stuff like that. I'll leave like the digital online, but like I was super upset because I love that story. Kroom, I think Kroom is a lot of fun. But what ended up happening was the artist for Kroom, he was the co-owner of Legacy at the time with me, and I wanted him to take like a lesser role in the company, and he refused. He wanted to continue to draw, and I was like, all right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we just do a black and white book? This way you don't have to color and just focus really heavy on your inks, and I think we could do something really cool. So I wrote Brooklyn Bleeds, and then probably like 3 weeks later, I bought the company, like the whole company. He was gone. So then I went on a quest for like 3 months to find an artist, and I came across Carl Antonitz. I met him through another podcaster friend of mine, Chris Osborne, does Play Comics, super awesome guy. And we did the first issue of Brooklyn Bleeds together. And I've basically, it's kind of like our Tales from the Crypt in a way when you think about it, because like we get a different artist pretty much every issue. Even though I will say, like, Christopher O'Neill, our newest artist who just did Journey of the Warriors, I would love to keep him. So we'll see how that goes. But in a nutshell, Brooklyn Bleeds, every zombie book, you're like, it's about like these cliched characters, like a police officer or this or that. Brooklyn Bleeds is about an animal, a dog, stuck in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. And it's basically narrated by the dog, written in like dog language, So it's super guttural. Yes, Kroom got a reboot, and I'm super happy with the way that the reboot came out. Godofredo is one of my favorite readers. Like, he's on our Patreon and stuff, and he's just like super knowledgeable about comics. Super awesome guy. But yeah, Brooklyn Bleeds tries to give like a different type of feel to a zombie book, because it's just like your heart kind of like goes out to animals in their time of need, So then it's just like this dog like lost everything, and it's like trying to put the pieces back together. So it's like Beast of Burden. But the thing is, Beast of Burden is written like no dog thinks the way like any animal in Beast of Burden really thinks. I love Beast of Burden. I think it's a great comic, but they speak like adults, like human beings. This is like, Turgeon, the Chow Chow in Brooklyn Bleeds, will be like scared. Not I am scared. He'll just be like scared. Instead of I'm hungry. Hungry, so it's written in a very guttural, instinctual way that like just makes it super easy to read. But like, we've been lucky to get some like really great artists. We just released like the first mini omnibus last week. It's called Brooklyn Bleeds the first week, and it's got 4 ash cans and 1 24-page issue in it. I'm super happy with the way that it came out. And it's just like the first like chunk of the story, but I have so much more written for it. So it's like, if you like zombie books, this is totally like a different take on zombies, and our zombies are much different. And we're just starting to like get to that point where people are starting to see that. So I'm really excited for this. I'm really excited.
And I'll say this, you flashed up the Brooklyn Bleeds Omni. Well, I know that you've had a couple of, I'm just looking at my list here, a couple of Omnis released recently. Condry, for example, The Job. Yeah. Check if you haven't read these books yet, this is probably the best way to do it. If you're going to do it physically, because he does have digital books as well. And like I said, Legacy has a little bit of everything. If you want horror books, if you want crime books, I know that Afram's book is very kind of like a kung fu kind of feeling.
Yeah,
to it.
the Legend of the Night Owl. It's like Luke Cage meets like the Warriors meets like oh my god, I can't believe I just forgot the name of the Marvel Kung Fu book.
Shang-Chi.
With some Shang-Chi in it. Like, oh, it's so much fun. And yeah, we have literally like something for everyone. If you have a kid, we have a book for them. If you have like Sarita is a great example of a book. I edited a fiction book probably like 8 months ago, and I what happened was my writer couldn't make like a book club that he was supposed to go to. So I was like, I'll go for you. And I go there, and it was like all like 40, 50, 60-year-old women. And I had a backpack full of comics, and I was like, what am I going to pitch to them? And I pitched Sarita, and I literally had women like grabbing me after by the hand. And they're like,
They weren't
you wrote
zombie
this?
women.
No, they weren't zombie women.
No, good. I heard the grab.
And yeah. No, but they were just like, this woman grabbed me by the hand, and she was just like, you wrote this? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, you can write women like incredibly well. I'm like, well, I can write people. It's people, and Sarita is like a huge part of Kandri. It's this woman right here. She's badass. I love her to death. So it's just like, we have comics for women. We have comics for hardcore comic book fans. And that's kind of like, I mean, when I look at our catalog up until this point, like we're roughly like 3 years into this, it's just like the stuff that like Valiant was doing when Valiant first came into existence with Jim Shooter, and like the stuff that like Barry Windsor Smith was doing with Malibu, and then like all the early Image stuff. They just had like such a big smorgasbord of stuff. And I feel like that's really like what we're trying to do. We're trying to get as many people reading comics as possible. So
Pat, let me interrupt you 1 second. I'm going to do the drawing in 5 minutes. So you have it already. Again, Legacy Comix with an X.com. Shop, page 12, book number 11, word number 8. And you could also just scroll up and see what the hashtag is. We're going to do that polling, that poll in about 5 minutes. Okay. Now let me see here too. You had a question. That's a nice one, Cassie. I like that. Again, a little something for everyone, but you had a question here from Robin. I thought it'd be great to jump into. Who did you do voiceover for?
So I have done lead voice acting in The Padre, which is it's a Catholic priest that's stuck in a zombie mansion. It's on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox, Nintendo Switch. I did both games in that series. I did lead voice acting in the new Renfield video game on Steam. I voiced all the male characters in that game: Nicholas Hoult, Nicolas Cage. And then I did over 90 voices in WrestleQuest for MegaCat Studios that came out last August. So we're talking about Macho Man Randy Savage. We're talking about the Road Warriors. We're talking about Junkyard Dog. Like every classic pro wrestler that you could imagine, I did the voiceover for that. I've done tons of trailers for video games. It's kind of like my bread and butter.
I'm very good at that deep baritone. Hello, Phil. You are listening to the Philtastic Comic Book Podcast. Booyaka, because I'm going to get with you.
That's what people always call me for. Pat, can you do like a 30-second trailer? And I'm like, okay. And I go downstairs and I do the voiceover for the trailer. So yeah, I've been doing that for about 5 years. No, a little bit longer than that. Maybe like 6.5 years. And that started with me I was approached to do dialogue editing on a video game. And then what happened was the voice actor left like right before our Kickstarter, and they asked like, do you know anybody? I'm like, let me do it. I can do it. And then they heard me do the Padre for the first time.
It's bloody like a dark Englishman. Hello, my name is Alexander, and I'm the Padre.
And they were like, oh my God, that's great. So yeah, I've what else have I done voiceover for? BPM Boy on the Atari VCS. I play the main bad guy in that. That's been a lot of fun. So yeah, that's been, guys, my whole thing is like just looking in the mirror at the end of the day, and I'm like, how am I making like 14-year-old Patrick as happy as possible? And like, if 14-year-old Patrick would want to do voiceover, would want to run a comic book company, would want to write books on video game history, would want to work at NBC, would want to be married with kids and be able to play Fallout at 2:00 in the morning and stuff like that. Like, I mean, that's kind of like, at the end of the day, that's like my biggest goal, to like make that young happy kid, like all of his dreams come true.
But
So,
do it responsibly too, because
yes,
I can
yes.
tell you, look, 14-year-old me would love going to the LCS and saying, I'm going to drop all this money on all these books. But you know, when you're head of the household, you can't necessarily do that.
Yeah. It's hard sometimes. You know, it's just then like making time for my kids and my wife and stuff like that. It's rough. I'm a full-time college professor. That's my full-time job. I've taught college journalism for 18 years. It's probably going to be the thing that I do for the rest of my life. I would love to continue. I want to do the comics as long as I possibly can. Like the whole, like I just published a hockey book 2 weeks ago because I realized, I'm like, oh my God, like I've written a book, like a full-length book every year since like 2017. And I'm like, I have to write a book this year, you know, and not a lot of people, you know, you guys listening probably don't know this. I know Phil knows this, but like my wife was diagnosed with cancer in January, and it's been like a really like tough year for us. And I still said to myself, I again looked myself in the mirror and I'm like, I need to write a book this year. And I just released this. This is Aces Over Brooklyn. And this is basically like the movie Slapshot came to life, because when I was 22, 23 years old, I covered minor league hockey for a couple of newspapers in Brooklyn. And this is basically every article that I wrote that year mixed in with new interviews with the players and stuff like that. And it's done great so far, but it's just like, I wanted to do something, you know, journalistic. And like I said, it's about being responsible, you know? And then the thing is too, going to bed every night and being like, I did everything that I was supposed to do. So after this podcast, I'm going to have a zebra cake. I'm going to play Fallout for maybe like a half hour. I'll probably rub my wife's feet for like a half hour. And then I'm going to go to bed exhausted. But I know I got everything done. And I feel like that's just been me my entire life, just making sure I don't go to bed until everything gets done.
Well, before we do our giveaway, I'm going to say yes. All of our thoughts and prayers are with your wife. You know, Pat, you know, from what I've seen on Pat's social, and Pat's one of those guys that always pops up at the top of my thing. So he's definitely on my algorithm. You know, they're keeping their heads high, and I've never met your wife, but I know that she's a fighter just from that. But that being said, let's give away what I'm going to call a legacy prize pack. Okay.
Ooh.
Now, if you are unfamiliar with this show, I don't have a laptop. I just operate off of my phone, and I do the giveaways on my iPad here. So you're not going to see it go, but I'll show who the winner is. And here we go. Spinning, spinning, spinning. Neil, you are the winner, sir. Neil collects. So Neil, and this works out well too, because I have something I've been meaning to send to Neil. Neil, message me with your address. I know I have it, but I'm me. You know this, so it's somewhere around here. And I'm going to put together a little bit of a prize pack for you. Pat and I will decide what we're going to do, and we'll get that out to you. I'm shooting for, well, I'm going to order that, I think, through you, Pat. We'll work that out.
Awesome. I hope you enjoy it, Neil. Thank you for thank everybody for playing, and thank you, Phil, for being Phil. You're awesome.
Oh, yeah, Robin corrected us. The Neil's not the winner. The winner is your wife, who gets the 30-minute foot rub.
Mm-hmm.
Just wash your hands after the zebra cake. I feel like that might lead to some sliding around.
Yeah,
with the foot massage.
It's like an episode of Seinfeld, like George eating a pastrami sandwich. You know, like.
I was thinking, did they do something with the? What am I thinking? With the turkey, with the Willie Mays chicken.
With the Kenny Rogers chicken, but then they did something with the turkey too, because I love Seinfeld. I make tons of Seinfeld references in my comics and stuff like that too. Like, you have to pay very close attention. But like, there's an episode of Seinfeld where Jerry is dating this woman with this slamming toy collection, and she will not let Jerry play with it. But he brings turkey, and she gets exhausted from the tryptophan, and she falls asleep, and Jerry invites everybody over the house so they can play with the Rock'em Sock'ems and the Easy Bake Oven and stuff like that. So yeah, oh my God.
Yeah. And I want to say too, I'm glad that you mentioned your teaching as well. I wasn't going to bring it up unless you brought it up, just because what one of the benefits again of knowing Pat, through Facebook and everything, he's really doing some great work there. I could see that he's touching a lot of students, in a good way, and really inspiring some. Why don't you tell us what is on the horizon? Actually, you know what? Before we do that, my favorite Legacy book, Condry.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I thought this was going to be a Sin City book, but you threw some turns in there. Why don't you tell people about Condry for those who might not be familiar with it?
So Condry is it's a love letter to 80s and 90s, like Frank Miller, Brian Michael Bendis. It's kind of like if you took early Spawn, the movie Highlander, and Sin City, and mixed it all like in a blender. It's about a New York City homeless man who's trying to find out who killed his father. And there's just like so much more to the backstory, because when you find out like what Condry like actually is, and like all of the things that are going on. So one of the bases for Condry is just like the way it's written. I'm not sure if you guys know who Stephen Glass is. He's one of the worst liars in journalism history. He basically made up like 60 stories that he wrote for the New Republic in Washington, and they caught him and he was blackballed out of journalism. But he said something really interesting once about what people are willing to believe. And I think this works out for like anyone that's like into comics or is into like telling fiction stories. And he basically said that like when you put a story together, you're looking at like 6 or 7 like different pieces that are going to get put together to make up your story. And like if the first 2 or 3 are she has a Condry hat. Cassie's awesome. That's the cool thing about fulfilling every order for Legacy. Like I know like there's like 5 people out there with Condry bomber jackets and like 10 people with Condry hats. It just makes me feel so good. But the thing is, like, out of those 5 or 7 things that you're going to use as like big parts of your story, if 2 or 3 are as based in reality as possible and they're so believable, the next 4 can be like so out there. But since the series is so grounded in reality, people will believe that other stuff. It's like, think about Spider-Man. Why do people believe like that he got bit by a radioactive spider? Because he's a geeky loser teenager, that lost his parents. Like, it's just so relatable. So Condry is like born out of that like classic like comic book formula. What's up, 3 good nerds? And it's about, like I said, a New York City homeless man that's he's basically just trying to find out what happened to his father. And this gang is running New York City. And it's super noir and it's super gritty. But there's like an element, like I said, of Highlander in there. There's also a ton of the Count of Monte Cristo in there. And this man has been like beaten like to hell and back. And he's been on the streets for a really long time. And then he's befriended by a woman that is seemingly like lost everything herself. And she's completely different than he is. So they're like the most unlikely duo. And if you like Law and Order, if you like really old school Daredevil, it's like totally like right up your alley. It's the first comic that I ever wrote, but it's my baby. I love it.
And I'll say this too. Everybody everything he's just said, keep all this in mind. Take a left turn, because there is a huge element in this that although Condry is an homage to everything he just said, or similar to everything he just said, there's an element in here that just totally flips the story, that when you see it, it kind of, I don't want to put any kind of hyperbole into it, like it questions everything that you think about the story, but it really does. You did say a little bit of the early Spawn. I could say it's like that, but I think it's better done, number one, because it's sequential. You're not going all over the place, and it's not somebody just saying, why don't we throw a cybernetic gorilla in there and see what happens?
Yeah.
But why don't you tell us now, what is on the horizon for Legacy?
So the first thing, like I said, is the omnibus. The Condry omnibus is like the biggest thing that we're pushing right now. It's Condry 0 through 5, Young Condry, Sarita, and Tales from the Condryverse, Angel of Death. So it's basically everything Condry related that we've done up until this point. Like, I love the way this book came out. I was looking at it like right before the print, and right before the podcast, and it totally reminds me of like the look and feel of like those Marvel like Essentials books, but the ones that they did in color.
Oh wow!
So it's just like, yeah, I love the way it came out, because like I was just reading the Marvel the Spider-Man Clone Wars saga Volume 1, and like the style of the print and the way the panels look on the pages, I'm just like, oh my god, the Condry book looks similar to this. This is crazy. Well, like the way it feels.
Condolences that you're rereading that.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible, but I love it at the same time. It's just like one of those things, you know. Phil looks different tonight, Phil. I love it. That's so funny.
Well, maybe we might make a night permanent. I don't know yet. We'll have to simmer on that and talk to my wife about it too.
You're doing good though, man. You're doing great. You're up, you know.
Thank you. Yeah.
So the Condry Omnibus is what we're pushing really hard right now. The Brooklyn Bleeds mini omnibus, we're pushing really hard. We just released The Bad Guy for the first time in physical. So The Bad Guy was written by Gordon Holmes, and it's a wrestling manga that will make you cry. So what happened was I know Gordon works on Survivor, the TV show Survivor.
Oh wow.
Look him up, Gordon Holmes, super awesome guy. I know him through a publicist that I met when I used to cover the WWE back in the day, and he's just like, oh, I know this guy. He wrote a comic. Would you want to talk to him? And I'm talking to Gordon, and Gordon's like, I want to be in the Patrick Hickey business, and I'm like, let me see this comic, and I read it, and the thing is, we were super tight. Like when I took over Legacy, we had like $70 in the bank account. Like we had paid for the Kickstarter, paid for our first run of books. And then I'm like, if we don't sell books soon, we don't have a company, you know? And that's one of the reasons why I took over the company. So like when Gordon came by, I was like, Gordon, I love this book, but the only thing that I could do for you right now is a digital release. I can't invest like a couple of $1,000s into your book because this is your first book that you're going to release. I don't know how well it's going to do, but I will release it digitally, and I will market it, and I will push it, and I'll do everything that I have to do. And it ended up becoming like one of our best digital books. And earlier this year in April, I was looking at our account, and I was just like, you know what? Brooklyn Bleeds deserves a physical release, because the original Brooklyn Bleeds didn't have a physical release. Only the Ashcans did. So I'm like, Brooklyn Bleeds is getting a physical edition, and The Bad Guy are. So like those are like the things, and like I said, Brooklyn Bleeds has a physical edition too. So those are the things that we're pushing right now. But on the horizon, Joshua Adams and I are working on something very special. So like I said, my first 7 books are on video game history. I've interviewed hundreds of video game developers. So this is the thing. I've probably sold thousands of copies of those books. I should have sold hundreds of thousands of copies of those books. The problem is a lot of gamers do not want to read like a book, for example, that looks like this. They don't. They don't want to read a book that is like mainly text, and like there's screenshots in there and cover art and headshots of the people and stuff, but it's not. All of my video game books are not coffee table books. They're books that you have to literally sit down and read. They're in colleges, you know, like so I'm like, what if we take like the best chapters of the minds behind the games and we tell them in comic book style? So I sat down with Joshua Adams virtually. I probably had an iced coffee and a zebra cake in each hand, and I was like, do you want to do this? And he's just like, well, what's the game? What's the first game that you want to do? And I was like, Red Dead Revolver. And he's like, oh my god. So the thing is, Red Dead Revolver has an amazing developer story. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking that chapter that was previously published in The Minds Behind the Games, and I'm adapting it to a 24-page comic. So it's a single issue, and it's the greatest hits. And it's just like, it's the entire development story done in sequential, and it's so much fun. We're aiming for a full release. It's going to be like, at this point, we've only had like 3 physical books published through Legacy and Amazon at the same time, but we're going to do it for this one. So this way, worldwide shipping and things like that. That's the thing, guys. When you run a small company, like I'll have people in like Australia go, I really want to buy your book, but I can't pay $30 to ship it. So then the thing is, it's just like, well, I don't have a distributor in Australia. So then the thing is, like, over the past couple of months, I've like really spoken to like the people, like, you know, at Amazon, like that at their publishing and stuff, like their printing and stuff. And it cost a little bit more. Like, all the covers are like cardstock, so they're a little bit different. But if I can get a comic to somebody in Australia, I'm willing to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm willing to not have like the ad on the inside and things like that. So the minds behind the games will be available on Amazon and on the Legacy shop. It's going to be so much fun. It's the dev story of how Red Dead Redemption, Red Dead Revolver came to be. So much fun.
I'm definitely going to be looking forward to that. Look, even if you're not a video game fan, even if you've never played Red Dead Redemption or Revolver, from what Pat is saying, it's not really a story about the game itself. It's a story about the passion behind the game, and I think that's something that we can all connect to. And trust me, too, Pat's the kind of guy that I believe that this is me saying this. Pat didn't tell me this. I believe that if he needed to get books to Australia and he didn't have a printer there, I could easily see him packing up a suitcase, going to Australia, distributing them by Dingo, I guess, if you have to.
It's like, I could tell you, I remember, guys, I try and leverage like every opportunity that I possibly can. Like, I remember MagFest in Washington, D.C. It's like a 3-day, 24-hour-a-day video game music convention. And I was invited to go there from MegaCat, the company that I do the voiceover for WrestleQuest and stuff like that. And they were like, if you want to sell comics, you can. I basically brought like 3 days of clothes, and then I packed 50 pounds of comics in my carry-on, you know, to go there and to move books. I did the same thing when I was in Chicago last year. I filled up like my entire carry-on with comics and stuff, and like I will literally do whatever I have to do to like try and get a book into your hands. And the thing is, I believe in them too. You know, there are so many people out there, and listen, it's hard because like indie comics is flooded with people. And like Robbie Liefeld said on his podcast a couple of months that there's more people in comics than ever, and many of them shouldn't be. I won't say that because he already did. But I will say that it's harder than ever to get your work noticed. And that's why I said before, like the whole build it and they will come, like it doesn't work. You have to be out there. And that's like one of the reasons why I do podcasts. That's why I do Facebook Lives. That's why I do this, I do that, because it's just like, I really believe in the stuff that we're doing, you know, and I wouldn't publish anything if I didn't believe in it. And I really feel that like the minds behind the games, comic is going to be so much fun. And it's about Dominic Craig, who, you know, played such an instrumental role in the creation of the game. But then it's also how the game went from being a Capcom property, and Capcom basically gave it away to Rockstar, and all these fun tidbits. So it's like, if you love video games, it's a great comic. If you love just cool stories, it's a really great story. And then the thing is, too, the art, Joshua Adams, he's the same guy that did Midland Beach Turkey Ninjas. He has his own series, Godfoe, that he does. It looks great too. So that's going to be up for pre-order probably in the next like month and a half. We're still like working on it. We're like a little bit more than halfway done.
Just to clear up some confusion, I might be wrong on this too. I know Neil asked and Cassie asked. Red Dead Revolver, I think, was the predecessor to Red Dead Redemption. Am I right? Did I make that up?
Yeah. Yep. It's the first one, and sold over 1 million copies. Super underrated game. Super like it played a pivotal role in the Rockstar era during the PS2 tenure.
It was released in 2004, so maybe they might redo it at some point. One final thing I want to say too, and Pat, if I'm speaking out of turn, let me know. If you own an LCS, or if you're friendly with your LCS owner and they're looking to do signings, Pat is very accommodating. I have to say that. And from what he's told me, at least the way that he's done things, it sounds like he makes it as easy for the LCS owner as possible.
Absolutely. And guys, it's hard. Like, listen, I've worked with several LCS over the past couple of years, and I understand that like your shelf space is super important to you, and you don't want to have 50 indie titles that no one's going to buy. You don't want to do deals with people for books that aren't going to sell. So like my whole thing is like, my book doesn't have to be in your store. I'm willing to go there with my books, promote the living hell out of the signing, do whatever I have to do to make it a success on my end. Come, sell books, agree on a dividend that works best for both of us, and then leave with my books. And if you guys believe in me and you want to pick up some of my books for your store, you're more than happy to do that. Like I did a signing. I did 2 signings in 2 weeks with Jim Hanley's in Staten Island, and they were like, "You made this amount of money in 2 signings." I'm like, "Is that good?" And they're like, "For an indie guy, oh my god!" And they're like, "Pat, you promoted the living hell out of it." So it was to the point where like, and I love those guys, Nick and Ron and Gore and Jim Hanley's are awesome. But when we were promoting, I saw that they were posting stuff on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm like, "You guys need like a sexy like flyer." Like you need sexier like social media stuff. And they're like, "Yeah, we're not that good in Photoshop and this and that." And I'm like, I sat down and I did it. And then I sent them the file. I'm like, "Put this in the front of the store." And they did. And then like, I'm like, "Man, if you need me to make 50 copies and walk around the neighborhood and staple them to trees, I'll do that too." You know, because again, that's my thing. If you're not hustling, if you're not doing everything that you can possibly do to further your brand like every single day, like why are we doing this? You know, like what's the point? So I try and make things as evenly, like as fair, and I try and put everyone in a position where they can make money, and I try and protect my talent as much as possible.
Good. Well, Pat, I'm going to come in for a landing here.
Yeah.
Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah. You can Google me. I'm telling you, if you just Google Patrick Hickey Jr., everything comes up. My Facebook, my Instagram. There's not many Patrick Hickey Juniors. So on Instagram, it's Patrick Hickey Jr., one word. On Facebook, it's Patrick Hickey Jr. I have a public page. I love interacting with people. I post a lot. I'm all about interacting, growing. If you're an artist and you're looking for work, if you're a letterer, if you're a writer and you want to do something, like, listen, let's do something. I aggressively want to make great stuff. Like that's what I want to do. So if you're like-minded and you hustle and you want to do stuff, I've got a whole bunch of cons, September, October, November that I'm helping organize, which is super cool. I'll have more stuff for that on my site in the next couple of days, but legacycomix.com, comix.com, the shop, legacycomix.com/shop. We've got tons of stuff. We've got physical, digital. We have trading card comics, you know, with a QR in the back. You scan it, you get the comic. If we could have smoke signal comics, we'd have those too.
Coming 2025.
Yes.
All right. So, Pat, thanks so much for joining me tonight. To everybody here, I appreciate you coming out and hanging with us. Again, I know it's a different hour from us, but, you know, let me know later on down the road. Is this something that you like? Do you like the nighttime version versus the morning version? Because maybe it might work out. But next week, I will be back on at 11 a.m. Eastern, where my guest is going to be Gary B., somebody that we all know from comic book YouTubes. And if you don't know, then tune in and you'll meet Gary. And again, support Pat, support independent comics. Look, you could go to legacycomix.com right now, right after we sign off, and download any one of his comics and be reading it within 5 minutes. You could be enjoying a Legacy Comix by the time before you go to bed tonight. So go ahead, check them out. And I can tell you, I'm not somebody who will talk up something if I don't like it. But I'm going to tell you, go there, download a book. You will not be disappointed.
I will say too, anyone that orders anything online tonight, I will give them Brooklyn Bleeds digitally for free in their order.
Special incentive. Go on there right now and do it. Pat, thank you again. And to everybody else, peace, love, and comics. Take care.
Yeah.